Hello again, YouTube. Again, apologies for this disheveled look. Can't do much about it. Earlier today, I made a video and I was grilling myself about how I can't get on board and get just some random bullshit, dead end job somewhere. I was getting mad at myself for not wanting to work at somewhere like McDonald's or Chipotle or something like that. And I had said further things about how, somebody's got to do the jobs, right? Somebody's got to do it, right? So why not you? And this just makes me angry, you know, because I feel like I should be worth more than that, because, you know, my first job, I was working at a Dunkin' Donuts, and my second job I was working at a Dunkin' Donuts. And then I graduated to cashier at Whole Foods. And after that I graduated to security work. And after that I graduated to an electrician and dropped out. But, the point is, I've been trying to graduate upwards, like, why would I quit a job being an electrician that made more money and step down to do a bullshit job that doesn't even make ends meet, Like, I tried to, logic it or use reason. It's just like, okay, it's closer to the house right now, so you don't have to commute to work and, whatever. But it like, I would have to take 3 bullshit jobs to pay for this life that I don't want, you know? I haven't done the exact math, so I feel like, I don't know, my brain is just like picking me apart right now. It's just like telling me that I'm lazy, that I'm a fucking loser and stuff. But I'm just trying to like motivate myself to like actually do something, Because the truth is, I'm not a lazy person. Well, I would like to say that, but my place is a sty right now, and I'm not doing anything about it because, I can't. What's the point? I can't. I am not keeping, the rent paid. I'm not keeping the electricity going. I'm. I was already ready to lose this place. I was expected to get evicted, and I, you know, when I first realized that, well, I was just like letting my world collapse. I was in damage control mode, and I was just like, okay, I need to take photos of all the pictures in all the books that I own. Page by page, I need to take pictures of them, and I need to, turn them into PDF files and stick them on a thumb drive. That way, if I lose all my books, all my notebooks, all my sketchbooks, I still have them, even if I lose them. And, I was going to do the same with all my books, as I mentioned, you know, and, I was just going to take, like, the stuff that I couldn't live without, or what I thought I couldn't live without, this tablet. I was going to try to get my computer in there because, you need the computer for stuff like Blender, which is a 3D software system that I haven't fully figured out how to use. The piano was something that I didn't want to part with, and, because if I got evicted, most people, you're expected to move out all your shit. And if you don't have a place to put it, then you have to put it in storage. But there's storage fees. So if you have no income, that means you lose everything that you own, right? You have to bring it to the dumpster. Or what most people are saying, just sell it. And it's just like, so I worked my ass off to pay for, like, this piano, for example, like $2,000, And I did a great job managing the credit card, and I paid it all the way down. I was pleased with myself, It showed, like, some financial responsibility, you know. And, well, all of a sudden, just like, well, people are trying to tell me that I need to sell it. I need to sell it for less than what I got it, And I'm just like, why on earth would I do that? Everything that I worked so hard to get, because at that time it was, like, important because I hadn't, like, opened my eyes to how fucked up the world actually was, you know. And, and I should elaborate that, but perhaps later. And, I had considered, different living arrangements, I thought about getting a van and converting a van and living in that. Some people are doing that. Some people are doing tiny homes. Some people are just, like, living in their car. I considered living in my car, but, the car's too small. And I realized that I don't even think I can take out the back seats. And if I did take out the back seats, I have nowhere to put them. So I would have to throw the back seats out and lose them forever, And so just, like, this whole process of I have to willingly delete my life because I can't get with the program, It just, I refuse to do that, So I said, I give up. I don't care, and if somebody comes to evict me, then, well, I guess I'll have to leave, but I'm not cooperating in, the deletion and the destruction of, like, all this stuff, even if I don't even care about it that much, Perhaps it's like a defensive mechanism, I stop caring about it, and thus I'm not, like, trying to, like, keep it clean or tidy. I put all the books. I just wanted a bookshelf. For the longest time, I just wanted a bookshelf to put all my books on. That way, it would look something like a library. I could never even get a fucking bookshelf. Just like, why didn't you get one from IKEA? I didn't want a shitty fucking bookshelf from IKEA that would break, I wanted a bookshelf that would last, like one of those old-fashioned ones. Why didn't you get one on Craigslist? I don't have a fucking truck. Why are you grilling me? Why are you just, like, saying shit, So, can't live in the car, don't have the capital to buy a van, don't have the capital to buy a bus, I'm honestly pretty much completely broke and, have absolutely nothing to work with. And the unfortunate thing is, no matter how much, I more or less wish I was dead, apparently I have to, like, retract that statement because I keep fighting to be alive. And I don't know why, And, I've tried to talk to my AI engine about it, Claude from Anthropic, and, he had suggested that's probably, like, some built-in biological function, But, like I mentioned in a different video, like, I was convinced that, I wasn't here. I was actually, like, in an emergency room and they were doing, like, brain surgery or they're doing heart surgery. And, I was dying and that's it, And it scared me, because I didn't want to die. And I keep, like, revisiting that, why don't you want to die? It's just, well, I don't want to be scared when I die, I don't want it to be meaningless, I don't want to have had such a shitty life, my entire fucking life, and it just to end abruptly because, something stupid. I never got a chance to, like, actually live. I don't even know what that looks like, I've never done things like, actually falling in love with someone, I don't know what that's like, I'm sure a lot of us haven't or something. I'm not individual in that case, Um, But, you know, because I can't find the strength and the courage to just like end it all, I'm stuck existing. And because I'm existing, I am being hurted. That is a word. I feel like I'm being forced to, contribute to society in a certain way. Just like, what does that mean? I don't know. I'm sorry. you know. And, lately I've been wondering, am I just like disgruntled and angry because nothing worked out for me? It's not fair because it didn't work for me, it doesn't work for anybody else, you know. And is it just because I was just never good enough? I didn't try hard enough, and I felt like I tried harder than anybody, at all things. And, I felt like most people that I knew, they just managed to skate by somehow. They didn't care about their studies, they didn't care about school, they didn't care about their work, they didn't do anything, and it was just like me at every job that I ever worked at. And I was like busting my ass and, trying to prove that the job mattered to me or something. I don't know. What was I trying to do? It wasn't so much proving that the job mattered to me. It was more of taking pride in my work, And, this was the job that I signed up to do, so this is what I was going to do. And, I guess now it's just like, overall, it was a bad deal. All of it, Just like, because at the time it was $9 working at Dunkin' Donuts, working at 2 Dunkin' Donuts to try to make ends meet, working 2 jobs is brutal, just like, when do you live life? If you're constantly at your job, when are you supposed to live life? And she's like, well, congratulations, you quit your jobs, and now you have all this time to live your life. And what are you doing? She's like, well, I don't have money. You can't live life without money. Round and around you go. I understand, But the thing that I keep coming up against is just like, apparently I'm not fully ready to quit and throw in the towel. Otherwise I would have, And here we are. So what do you do in this situation? And it's just like, okay, let's review the options, You tried to be some sort of chess influencer, but the analytics failed, and nobody liked your content. Because nobody likes your stupid face. Okay, that was harsh. Probably true, but harsh. And it's just like, was trying to make art content too, but it's really hard to actually make art and animation when you're struggling financially and you have no food, and you're worried if the lights are going to turn off and the Wi-Fi is gone, and and at the same time it's all just excuses, because if you wanted to, you would, and I do, even today I was just like, just doodling, nothing impressive, like, am I trying to convince myself that I like art? I do like art, I just, for the same reason I can't be a chess instructor, for the same reason I can't be a piano instructor, I can't be like an art freelancer, because, the pressure is too much, because can I say that I know how to draw? Sure, I can say that, but, I'm not at a competitive enough level, is the thing. There are a lot of people that are better than me, Why does this matter? You're not supposed to compare yourself to others. This is frustrating. This is incredibly frustrating because, I spent, while I was during my entire working career, I was also studying like music theory, and I was studying like art theory, and I was studying like a bunch of other stuff on the side. Some people, I guess, would call me like a polymath. I don't know if that's true. I'm not entirely sure what a polymath is, but someone that like has multiple fields of studies or something like that. It just seems incredibly fucking hopeless. Because before I had thought that, just like, oh, I want to be an artist, an animator. I want to work on 2D animated films and movies and work on games and help people make, like, game designs and stuff like that. And it's just like, well, sit down and work on your portfolio. And I do try. I do try. And, I can't tell if it's an excuse or if I just don't have it. The skill. And I try to remind myself that, Mario, the original Mario was just like a bunch of pixels. And that was super successful. You know, how, the original, like, Pokemon games were just sprites like this. I'm sorry that I keep flipping a knife. I'm not doing anything with it. But the standards are all extremely high right now. Maybe it's just like excuses, for feeling like I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm just trying to blame other people and just like take acceptability and responsibility that I am just a deadweight fucking loser who is incapable of anything. And, it's tough because I got one voice in my head that says that's not true, but it's only a half-hearted statement. It's just a platitude. It's what you tell people that are dealing with not feeling good enough. You say you are good enough, even if they're not. You know? You know? I guess the idea is you work a dead-end job and you work something on the side until it works. You don't do what I do and just like quit everything and say, this is a waste of my life. I'm not doing this anymore. I don't know, because the current predicament that I'm in, I've got nothing, and I look towards the future and I see myself not improving, just getting worse. And, if I make it to old age, I see a decrepit old man who hasn't accomplished anything in his life, never fell in love, never got married, never started a family, doesn't have his own house. It's just either renting or on the streets. And right now there's some new laws passed to get people off the streets, throw them in mental asylums. And if they can't find mental asylums, then they put them in the prisons. So they are criminalizing, the whole homelessness thing. They want you to get with the program, to contribute to society, or else. And, jail doesn't even sound that bad, now. It's just like, it's pretty much the same as the life that I've been living, except they would feed me more, and I would be required to take more showers than I'm already taking, I make jokes. It's just like, maybe I would even have sex in prison, Dark joke. 3 meals in a cot, or something, But it's not what I want for myself. What do you want for yourself? You keep saying that you don't want anything, And, does that just mean that nothing is worth it? Nothing is worth fighting for right now? And, my brother is telling me, just like, you have to, like, make up with me, or something to the effect, I still don't know why I'm making these videos. It's just like, am I just doing, like, a psychological interview with myself? Just putting it out there, just in case other people are struggling. I'm just like, I don't know, are other people struggling? Because I go and I walk around and I see people on their phones and, in their cars and driving around to who knows where. And, I see them, like, in the grocery store, and I see them, like, smiling and eating sushi with each other. And it's just like, other people are happy. They're quite content with the system as it is. Or, everybody's just lying and barely getting by. I I don't know what's true. I don't know anything, which is something that I keep running up against. I don't know anything. And that's, well, perhaps you spent too much time alone and you're being too mean on yourself. Or maybe I'm being extremely fucking accurate and, I'm just saying the hard truths that nobody else wants to fucking tell me. But the fact of the matter is, I need to figure something out because, I'm just out of resources, Like, I haven't... I have a gift card for some money that, I'm supposed to walk across town, and lately all I've been buying is coffee creamer and pasta and spaghetti sauce and meatballs. And I know that, I'm, like, I want to become vegan at some point, or, a vegetarian at least. Just like, why don't you get rice and beans? I'll have to consider it. But the thing is, I've been going to, the store, and I've been getting just food for spaghetti, right? And I've been eating a bowl of spaghetti per day, 8 meatballs, half a pack of, like, pasta, and that's it. And, whatever donuts or muffins that I can find from the dumpster at Dunks after hours, And, I've been thinking, it's just like, how does one make money, It's just like, well, get a job. And it's just like, that's not going to cut it, Because my thing is, you go and you work a job, and you get trapped there forever, and you just stay there until something changes, So I forced a change when I left, the whole electrical field, because otherwise I was going to get trapped there forever. Anyway, I feel like it's all bad excuses. I'm just a shitty person, to be honest with you, a pathetic person. And, even if people say, oh, that's not true, you're this, that, and the other, it's just like, yeah, well, why doesn't it show, Still, I suppose the story is important. I mean, I guess the only thing that's stopping me from, like, quitting this video is knowing that I'm just gonna, like, lie here and be depressed. And that's not productive. I mean, this video isn't productive. Nothing is productive. I need to mind myself. I'm losing YouTube Red in 2 days. So, I was, like, going and I was, like, scrolling on YouTube, figuring out what's going on with the news and other such things, but occasionally like watching a movie or something just to like stay sane. I've been watching the Batman movies, some of them, because, I guess in the back of my mind, I'm studying animation because I wanted to be an animator. Watch animation if you want to be an animator. I looked for animation jobs once upon a time, and, I don't know how to break into the industry, you know, and, I tried to post my stuff to, like, Instagram, but it was either trash or nobody cared or both. Recently I tried to start posting it to Twitter because Claude suggested that Twitter was more active. But, I'm sorry, X, whatever. But then I realized that because I'm like a relatively new poster, all of my things are blocked and nobody sees it anyway, so, and just like you can pay like this premium amount to get it seen by other people, and it's just like, well, that's not gonna work. I'm so devastated. And once upon a time I was eligible for like unemployment benefits, but I like refused because, you know, because it felt like a consolation prize. It didn't feel like a benefit, it felt like, the very fucking bare minimum. The money that would come in, it would immediately just get eaten up by rent, and that's it. It would just pay utilities, and then I would just be in this house with like the electricity and, the place and maybe some food, and that's it, and I would be in the exact same position, but more so, they're holding it hostage because they require you to search for jobs. And, so I did look for jobs, and, after all of my job searching, I felt like the most straightforward job was actually just a dishwasher. You go in, you wash dishes, you go home. It's not like you go to a job and just like all of a sudden, this person called in sick, so you have to work a double and it's mandatory and you have no say in the matter. And it's just like, I keep saying that I can't do this anymore, and I can't, and I've said this over and over and over again throughout the years, I can't do this anymore, I can't do this anymore, and I'm forced to continue, because you can't stop. There is no stopping, and it's just like, what do I do? Just like walk away from this and go live out in the wilderness somewhere? Build a primitive home? Live isolated? That doesn't sound like much of a life either, I mean, the idea is somewhat attractive, but, without building supplies and building tools and stuff like that, just like, what am I supposed to do? I mean, do I actually want to build, a primitive house made out of sticks? Build a teepee or something? And turn fibrous plants into like cordage and bind and lash it up and live like that? I've got some people that are like concerned about me, and I'm just like, don't waste your energy. I'm not worth it. Just like, what do you expect me to just like snap out of it? What do you expect me to agree to go work dead end jobs? Try to maintain a life that I don't want? A life that is completely meaningless? I can't do it. And I don't know what I'm gonna do, because I can't do what I'm doing either. This is just all so fucking sad and depressing. But that's all for this one. Thanks for listening. although nobody's there, but thanks anyway. Appreciate you.